Hey everybody, this is going to be a short tutorial about how to use QGIS to download OpenStreetMap data and also on how to use some of the plugins in QGIS to do a quick heat map, create a sampling grid and count the number of points over a certain area and take a look at that. So let's go ahead and jump in. The first thing we want to do here is to identify a study area. And the way to do that is to use a plugin here called Quick Map Services that once you've installed it will give you a variety of different base maps that you can draw from. I'm going to use OpenStreetMap as mine, and then I'll just zoom in. I'm going to look in Athens, Georgia, which is right here. So I'm going to zoom in and basically select my study area this way. This is the area that I want to look at. Once we've done that, now we need to download some OSM, OpenStreetMap data. This is another plugin. This one's called Quick Maps or Quick OSM. And Quick OSM uses the overpass interface with OpenStreetMap, which allows you to dynamically download stuff that's in the OpenStreetMap database. You'll either install it, or in this case, I need to upgrade it. So I'm going to go ahead and upgrade it here real quick. Get a sense of what that process looks like. It happens pretty quickly. There we go. So now it's updated, and it'll show up right down here. It's that little green layer right here. This is, I believe, an editing tool, but this is how you would query OpenStreetMap. So let's go ahead and click on that. And you'll end up with a window that looks something like this. It'll ask you for a broad category, a subcategory, and an area. So let's start with, we're going to look at, let's look at amenities, and let's look at barbecues. And we'll do it in the, you can either do it in a particular place, which I think is kind of spotty. You can do the canvas extent, which is just this window, or you can choose a layer extent if you have a particular polygon that you're interested in using. So I'll just use canvas extent here to make this a little bit longer. I'll do my run query, and it'll download the data. And you'll see in this point, it just loads some points, right? So there's some barbecues in the middle of Athens. Let's do one other one here. Let's do bicycle parking. This is another example. And I'll go ahead and click that run query. And you'll see in this case, I got both polygons and points, because sometimes things are entered as polygons. There must be some kind of parking structure somewhere on here. Oh, it's right down there. This little thing here was entered as a polygon rather than as a point. If I wanted to, I could just do a centroid from that. There's a tool in the processing toolbox called centroids that will collapse a polygon down to a point. For now, I'm just going to ignore that because that's just an example. So now I've got two different point layers, and let's just say I want to do a heat map of those. Maybe we're going to add, let's add one more so we have a little better spatial coverage. Let's do parks. That'll be under leisure and park here in canvas extent. Go ahead and run the query here, and we're going to get even more polygons here, is my assumption. Yep, so now we have all these polygons. Again, we'll ignore those for now, and those green points are the parks. Yeah, that gives us a little broader range of points here. So once we've done that, we're going to need to connect all these points together, because we want to count, we could count each one of these individually, but let's just say we want to count these points as a single group. To do that, we use the union tool. Union is how you connect data sets to one another. You combine them together. We're going to have to do this twice because we can only do two at a time. So let's connect parks to barbecues. And I'm just going to leave it as a temporary layer for now. Click run. Now we get that union layer here. Now we're going to run that again and do that union layer with the bicycle parking. And we'll go and click on run. And we get a second union layer, I think. Let's see if that worked. Ooh. I think I did it with the wrong. I think I did it with the polygon layer, because these should not be polygons. So let's try this again. This can be a trial and error process. So we start with, let's do this again, amenity barbecue. That's a point layer. You can see these little points here. Amenity bicycle parking. I go ahead and click on run. There we go. So now I have a union that's points. Let's do that again. Union with parks, I believe, is what I want, right? Yes. Those parks are still not included. So I run that. And now I've got all these pink points are all my points together. So now let's look at where those points are located. To do that, I need to create a sampling grid. And there's another plugin called QGIS. If you go under plugins here, manage and install plugins, and choose QGIS, you'll see that listed here. It's got a variety of really helpful tools, and you'll want to go ahead and install that. And then I go QGIS create grid layer. And you can choose lots of different types of grids. You can do rectangles, diamonds. I'm going to use hexagons because those are pretty trendy. My layer is in decimal degrees, so my layer units will be decimal degrees. Let's do 003. The spacing matters a lot here. I'm going to save it on my computer as just a temporary file. And I'll go ahead and click on Apply. Boom. Now you'll notice this is not perfect. It doesn't always get the... Let's try the current window, and we'll do this as A. There we go. That's what I want. Except now the spacing is wrong. Oh, it's because this is a different projection. So this is a tricky thing with this. When I'm doing it by a layer, I've got layers that are based on decimal degrees. But if I go to the current window, that's in a unit that's probably meters. And so let's do this a little bit smaller. Let's do 500 here. And so again, this is a process of trial and error, finding exactly what the right size is. Well, actually, now it's back to decimal degrees. Let's try this one more time. There we go. So now we've got something that more or less covers the whole area. And you can see here's our union points underneath it. Now to do a count within this, we're going to need to add a feature ID number to each one of these. If you open the attribute table of these grid cells, we just have coordinates. We need to add an ID number for each one of these. If you're a student in my classes, that you might get a grid layer that already has this added, so just ignore this step completely. But if you're working with the QGIS tool, you have to add basically a row number, and the way to do that is to click on this add variable tool, add field tool, and just the identity or the function for that is row number, just like that. And then we'll call this row ID. Will be the new variable. I click OK. There it is right here. I turn off editing and save it. And then the last thing I'll have to do is count points in Polygon, which is a nifty little plugin in QGIS that allows us to, as it says, count the points in Polygon. So I'm going to use my temp B layer that I created. I want to use one of these unions, and this is the tricky thing here. Let's get rid of the one I don't want, so I know I'm doing the right one. Let's try this again. So my polygons are temp B. My layer is union. Everything else can stay the same. If you want to change the field name, you can. If you want to save it on your computer, you can. I'll click on Run. It takes a second, and it's counting the number of points in each polygon. Close that. Now we have a count polygon field. Let's go ahead and map out a result. So I go into Properties. I do Graduated, and I use that num points variable that just got created. So we're choosing natural breaks here, and you'll see there's a little bit of a range. Let's go ahead and click OK. And if we drag this below our points, turn our union points back on, you'll see that matches up pretty well. So we get to see where that heat map is. Now these are stretched out because of the nature of the projection that's going on here. This is the distortionist projection. A couple of things to clean up this map just as we're finishing it up. We could, for instance, turn off all these white grid cells where there's no data. Right, so now we just have grid cells where there's 0 to 1 points, basically just 1 point, and then on up from that. And then we can make these semi-transparent as well. And the way you do that is by going back into the properties and using the symbol tool. If I click on this drop-down menu, I can change the transparency right here. So let's make it kind of semi-transparent. Click OK. Now if we zoom in, we can see down through that. So that's a basic walkthrough of how you would download OpenStreetMap data and then use grid cells to create a sampling grid and count the number of points within each grid cell. Hopefully that's useful.